Sicily. The sun paints the hills gold. Fishermen pull in their nets. Church bells drift over the harbor. It feels peaceful until you notice how quietly the streets fall silent at dusk. People here know when not to ask questions. Because beneath the postcard, beauty lies another Sicily, an invisible map drawn in favors, debts, and fear. For centuries, when kings and governments came and went, one truth never changed. Someone else always held the real power. Tonight we walk through that hidden world, a place where loyalty could save your life, and silence could cost it. Once, Sicily was a prize every empire wanted. The Phoenicians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Arabs, the Normans, each left its mark. A fortress here, a road there, a new tax on the same tired farmers. After every conquest came the same pattern: distant rulers, fragile justice, and locals forced to protect themselves. Out of that habit grew something subtle: private protection that slowly turned into private power. By the 19th century, the island glittered with citrus groves. Lemons and oranges were yellow gold, shipped to London and New York to keep sailors healthy. But guarding those groves was more dangerous than harvesting them. Thieves, bandits, and corrupt guards stalked the countryside. So landowners hired men of respect, intermediaries who could talk to the right people, recover stolen goods, make problems disappear. They were efficient because they knew both worlds, the thieves and the law. At first, they were useful. Then they became indispensable. And when someone becomes indispensable, he becomes powerful. These early protectors created their own unwritten code: omerta, the law of silence. A man who spoke to the authorities brought chaos on his village. A man who stayed silent kept order. At least, that's what people told themselves. Soon the code spread wider than fear. It became identity. To break omerta was not just betrayal, it was blasphemy against the island's unwritten religion of survival. As Italy unified in 1861, new politicians tried to extend the young state's authority to Sicily. They brought officials, police, taxes, but not trust. The peasants still turned to local patrons when disputes arose, not to courts. The new government called this lawlessness. Sicilians called it tradition. And so the honored society began to form, a network of families, each controlling its territory like miniature kingdoms. They provided arbitration, collected dues, punished betrayal. Initiation meant blood on the fingertip, a burning saint's picture, and an oath: may I burn as this image burns if I betray my brothers. It sounded sacred because it was meant to replace the absent sanctity of justice. Money soon flowed from the lemon trade, from smuggling, from anything that moved across the docks. A farmer who refused to pay protection might find his trees poisoned. One who paid slept peacefully. The line between protection and extortion vanished. The men of honor became businessmen of fear. In the cities, ambition met opportunity. Palermo's new politicians learned quickly that these local brokers could deliver votes. In exchange, investigations disappeared, contracts changed hands, and the same few families grew rich under the banner of patriotism. The state needed order. The mafia sold it wholesale. For ordinary Sicilians, the system was confusing but familiar. If your mule was stolen, you didn't go to the police. You went to the man who could find it. If your son was in trouble, you didn't hire a lawyer. You begged a favor. Every favor carried a debt. And debt in this Sicily never truly ended. By the late 19th century, newspapers were whispering about an invisible power. A few brave writers used the word mafia, a word whose origins remain a puzzle. maybe Arabic for swagger, maybe French for secret society, maybe just a local word for pride. Whatever its root, it now meant something precise, a brotherhood that answered to itself. Travelers described an island ruled by paradox, breathtaking beauty paired with quiet menace. Bandits on the roads, silence in the markets, and in the distance, palaces funded by both lemons and fear. The Mafia had become a shadow government, collecting taxes no parliament approved, enforcing laws no court had written, maintaining peace that smelled faintly of gunpowder. And yet ask any elder from that time, and they might shrug. At least they kept order. That, perhaps, is the most Sicilian irony of all. What began as protection from chaos ended by becoming the very thing people feared, a system too efficient to die and too familiar to be hated outright. The year is 1861. Italy is newly born, stitched together from the remnants of kingdoms and duchies that never truly wanted each other. Far to the south, across the strait, Sicily looks up at this newborn nation with suspicion. The tricolor flag flutters over Palermo, but the real heartbeat of the island still belongs to the villages, the groves, and the families who have learned never to trust distant rulers. The lemon had become Sicily's blessing and its curse. Since British sailors discovered that citrus fruit could cure scurvy, the world's navies and traders had turned to Sicilian orchards for their yellow gold. Ships lined Palermo's docks, barrels of fruit stacked like treasure. In 1 year alone, the island exported millions of cases to London and New York. For the barons and merchants, it was fortune. For everyone else, it was survival. But lemons invite thieves the way gold invites envy. The groves stretched for miles, fenced by crumbling stone walls and guarded by men with shotguns who called themselves campieri, wardens. Yet these guards were not merely employees. They were the first foot soldiers of a new order. They belonged to the honorata societa, the honored society, men who claimed to stand for respect, silence, and justice when the law failed. To a newcomer, the arrangement looked simple. A farmer paid for protection, and in return his fruit was safe. But everyone on the island knew the paradox. Protection and threat came from the same hand. Refuse the offer and your trees might wither overnight. A mule might be found with its throat cut. The message was never signed, but everyone knew who sent it. When the Italian state tried to impose new laws, the old code of omertà hardened. People learned to speak softly, to handle matters within the family. The police were outsiders speaking another dialect, another loyalty. A complaint to the authorities could mark you as a traitor. Better to pay the fee, better to nod respectfully when the friends came to visit. Among these early protectors, certain names began to carry weight. Men who mediated disputes, recovered stolen goods, arranged marriages, even helped secure government contracts. They were part priest, part judge, part enforcer. They dressed modestly, attended mass, kissed the bishop's ring, and yet everyone understood that behind the smiles were the pistols and the knives. The citrus trade fueled it all. The groves required irrigation pumps, warehouses, shipping brokers, guards, carters. Every step was an opportunity for a man of honor to take a small percentage. By the 1870s, the network had become an economy within an economy. The government collected taxes on paper. The mafia collected them in person. But the illusion of order couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, someone would test the system. someone who believed that law and honesty could stand against the silent empire of fear. His name was Dr. Gaspar Galati, a surgeon, educated, rational, a man who believed that reason could triumph over superstition. In 1872, he inherited a struggling lemon estate outside Palermo, a place called La Favorella. To him, it was a family duty, a chance to apply science to agriculture. He installed a modern steam pump to irrigate the trees, hired wardens, and kept meticulous books. Within weeks, he discovered that his profits were vanishing. Lemons disappeared before reaching the market. Coal meant for the pump was stolen. The numbers made no sense. Galati investigated and found the culprit, his own chief warden, Benedetto Carlo, a man respected in the nearby village, known to have friends. When Galati dismissed him, neighbors warned, "Signore, do not provoke men of honor." Letters arrived advising him to rehire Carlo for his own safety. He ignored them. Days later, his new warden was ambushed on the path between the groves, shot from the darkness. The man lived long enough to whisper that he had seen Carlo's associates waiting among the lemon trees. Galati went to the police. They nodded, took notes, and did nothing. Carlo was arrested, questioned politely, and released before nightfall. Soon after, Galati began receiving new letters, 7 in all, each more threatening than the last, written in careful script. It was wrong to dismiss a man of honor, rehire him, or face the consequences. When he appealed to a magistrate from the mainland, details of his complaint somehow reached the very men he accused. One letter quoted lines from his private correspondence word for word. Someone inside the justice system was leaking information to the mafia. In 1875, his third warden was shot in broad daylight. The assassins were never caught. The wounded man, terrified, retracted his testimony after visiting the local boss, a certain Giamona, the capo of the Uditore district. He dined at the boss's house, shared wine, received forgiveness, and afterward declared that his earlier statements had been misunderstandings. Case closed. Realizing the futility of the fight, Galati gathered his family and fled to Naples. He wrote a long report entitled "The Mafia and the Lemon Industry of Palermo," describing everything he had witnessed: the corruption, the threats, the complicity of officials. His words were both courageous and tragic. A man of science trying to diagnose a disease that had already infected the body of the state. Galati's account would later become the first detailed study of the Sicilian Mafia. It revealed how the organization operated like an organism, feeding on fear, adapting to every attempt at eradication. The doctor lost his estate, his income, his peace. The mafia lost nothing. To the men of honor, Galati's story was a warning to others: do not challenge the order. To history, it became proof that the order existed. By the late 1870s, Sicily had become a chessboard of interests. Each district had its Cosca, its family, and each family had a patron in the municipal government. Elections were won not by speeches but by favors. A candidate who promised road repairs or tax relief would find himself escorted through the villages by men whose very presence guaranteed votes. The ballots were secret only in theory. Everyone knew who delivered them. Parliamentarians in Rome grumbled about criminal interference, but those same men quietly requested Sicilian votes when their own seats were threatened. The mafia had found its perfect disguise: patriotism. The lemon profits funded expansion into shipping, grain, and land management. Young men sought membership, not out of necessity, but ambition. To be uomo d'onore, a man of honor, was to command respect in a world that respected nothing. The initiation ceremonies became more theatrical. A saint's image burned in the recruit's palm, blood on the oath, a kiss on both cheeks. The language was sacred, the business purely secular. Foreign journalists visiting Palermo were enchanted by the paradox. They wrote of elegant cafes filled with men who quoted Dante while carrying revolvers in their coats. At night, gunshots echoed from the hills, and the next morning a funeral procession would wind through the same streets. The police would take notes, shrug, and order another espresso. In 1890, a parliamentary inquiry finally used the word mafia officially, describing it as a form of organized patronage founded on intimidation. But by naming it, they also acknowledged its permanence. The state could not destroy what it secretly relied upon. The mafia had become Sicily's shadow government, efficient, feared, and strangely stable. It controlled elections, trade, and the very rhythm of life. A child born in those years might never see a policeman who wasn't afraid, but he would know the face of the local capo who settled disputes and provided work. Yet beneath that apparent stability, a new world was forming. Industrialization, emigration, and the lure of America were beginning to reshape both Sicily and the mafia itself. Ships departing Palermo carried thousands of hopeful peasants, and hidden among them, a few men who would plant the same dark seeds on foreign soil. The lemon groves still shimmered under the sun, but their scent now mixed with something sharper, the smell of ambition crossing the ocean. The year is 1892. Palermo's harbor smells of salt, smoke, and lemons left to rot in wooden crates. Families crowd the pier clutching trunks, rosaries, and dreams. They are leaving Sicily, some to escape hunger, some the law, and a few because a whisper from the local capo has told them that America is a land wide enough to disappear in. Steamships bound for New York are floating cities of exhaustion. Third-class cabins packed so tightly you can hear every prayer and every stomach growl. Among the emigrants are bakers, stonemasons, widows, and a handful of men whose quiet confidence seems out of place. They don't speak much, but people make room for them automatically. They are gli uomini d'onore, men of honor, heading west. When they disembark at Ellis Island, America doesn't look like salvation. It looks like fog, shouting officers, chalk marks on coats, and the stink of disinfectant. Names are shortened, misspelled, reborn. Salvatore Lucia becomes Sam Lucci. Giuseppe Morello keeps his name, but not his patience. Within months, he and a circle of cousins rent a basement on East 11th Street in Manhattan. There, surrounded by barrels of cheap wine and wooden presses, they begin counterfeiting $5 bills with a skill that even federal agents have to admire. The Morello family is considered the first real Sicilian Mafia casca on American soil. Their code is old, their surroundings entirely new. New York's police are bribbable but chaotic. Irish gangs rule the docks. Jewish gangs rule the garment trade. The Italians carve out what's left, the streets of Little Italy and Harlem, with knives and whispers. Where law is weak, protection becomes a business again. Shopkeepers pay for safety from the same men who threaten them. It's Sicily, reborn in tenement shadows. But America changes the game. Here the state is distant but powerful. A single indictment can destroy a family. So the mafiosi learn to adapt. Hide behind businesses, keep ledgers, wear suits. Violence becomes the final option, not the first. A handshake replaces the shotgun, until it doesn't. By the turn of the century, New Orleans has its own Sicilian quarter. Dock workers from Palermo and Corleone control the fruit trade. Blackhand letters demanding protection money terrorize the city. When Police Chief David Hennessy is murdered in 1890, suspicion falls on the Italians. 11 men are lynched by a mob, while the mayor looks the other way. It is America's first taste of mafia hysteria, and it teaches the families 2 lessons: keep quiet and never trust publicity. Meanwhile, back in Sicily, the citrus boom fades. Land reforms and taxes squeeze profits. The Cochet need new income, and America is sending back money and stories of opportunity. Letters arrive from New York describing businesses that need investors. Within a decade, transatlantic crime routes are open. Counterfeit currency one way, extorted cash and immigrants the other. The mafia has gone global long before the word globalization exists. The Morellos expand into Brooklyn, absorbing smaller crews. They run gambling dens, protection rackets, and smuggling operations. But greed breeds attention. In 1909, an Italian detective named Joe Petrosino, the first of his kind, lands in Palermo to gather intelligence on mafia immigrants. Someone leaks his mission. Petrosino is shot 4 times in the piazza. No one sees, no one speaks. The news shocks both nations. The Sicilian Mafia has reached across the Atlantic and killed an American cop on foreign soil. For a moment, the island is under scrutiny again. Yet trials collapse. Witnesses vanish. In the cafes of Palermo, men toast "our cousins in America." The message is clear. The honored society now spans an ocean, and its silence is thicker than ever. When the First World War ends, America drinks to forget. And then the government, in a flash of moral enthusiasm, bans liquor altogether. January 1920. Prohibition. The law meant to save souls ends up minting millionaires. For the Sicilians, it's divine providence. In New York, Chicago, Detroit, and New Orleans, small Italian crews merge into vast distribution networks. Whiskey from Canada, rum from Cuba, gin from basement stills. The Irish import, the Jews finance, but the Sicilians protect with lead. A new word enters newspapers: the mob. At its heart remain the codes of Sicily: family loyalty, secrecy, honor twisted into power. In New York, one man rises above the rest: Salvatore Luciano, better known as Lucky Luciano. Born in Lercara Fredi, Sicily, he arrived as a boy and learned to fight for everything: coins, corners, respect. By the 1930s, he is the architect of modern organized crime. He abolishes old world titles and creates something almost corporate: a commission of families to settle disputes and share territories. No more constant wars. Profit is the new honor. But the Sicilian connection never fades. Luciano's most trusted ally, Vito Genovese, still sends money and men back home. Ships carrying olives and wine also carry heroin, hidden in cans or woven into fabrics. The mafia has found its new gold. In Sicily, post-war poverty ensures an endless supply of hands willing to harvest opium and refine it into morphine base. The triangle is complete: Middle East to Sicily to America. Across the Atlantic, another figure is making headlines: Al Capone in Chicago. Though Neapolitan by blood, his organization mirrors Sicilian efficiency. Capone pays off judges and police, runs soup kitchens for the poor, and orders massacres for his rivals. The press calls him public enemy number 1. The Sicilians call him useful. He buys liquor from their contacts and sells it throughout the Midwest, creating a supply chain of crime that spans a continent. When Prohibition ends in 1933, the Mafia faces a question: what now? Their empires built on illegal liquor are crumbling. Some move into construction and unions, others into gambling and drugs. But Luciano sees further. He wants legitimacy through control of labor and politics. The commission meets in secret to divide New York into 5 families, a system that still defines the mob today. Meanwhile, back in Sicily, the fascist regime of Mussolini has declared war on the mafia. The Iron Prefect Cesare Mori arrests thousands, humiliates bosses, and forces many to flee. Hundreds escape to America, carrying with them the old codes and resentments. Among them are young men from Corleone, Palermo, and Trapani, names that will one day terrify both sides of the Atlantic. The irony is brutal. Mussolini's crackdown only exports the mafia to America in bulk. By the late 1930s, New York's underworld is a blend of Sicilian tradition and American innovation. Oaths are still taken with burning saints, but profits are tracked on typewriters. The family is no longer a metaphor, it's a corporation. World War II engulfs Europe. The Allies are preparing to invade Italy, but Sicily remains a mystery. Maps are outdated. German mines line the coasts. The U.S. Navy faces a problem. They need intelligence from inside the island, and fast. Someone in naval intelligence suggests an unlikely ally, Lucky Luciano, now imprisoned in New York for running a prostitution ring. The idea sounds insane until they try it. Operation Underworld is born. In exchange for reduced sentences, Luciano and his contacts promise to secure the New York docks from sabotage and provide contacts in Sicily. Messages fly through the prison walls, across the Atlantic into villages where the mafia has waited in silence since Mori's crackdown. When the Allies land in July 1943, they find roads cleared, bridges intact, and guides waiting with white flags and American slang. Within weeks, Sicily falls. The Allies' credit strategy. Locals whisper that Don Calogero Vizzini, a mafia boss of Villalba, guided them personally. Soon, Vizzini is appointed mayor by Allied authorities. The mafia is reborn as a partner of liberation. It is the ultimate irony. A criminal brotherhood declared enemy of the state by Mussolini becomes ally of democracy overnight. From that moment, their influence is woven into the fabric of post-war Italy. When Luciano was released and deported to Naples in 1946, he continues to manage the heroin trade from the shadows. The French Connection pipeline, Turkey to Marseille to Sicily to New York, turns millions of dollars each year. Small Sicilian towns suddenly overflow with Cadillacs and American cigarettes. For the first time, the mafia is not just surviving, it's thriving in 2 hemispheres. Politically, the new Italian Republic is desperate to keep communism at bay. Washington funnels money into Christian Democrat parties, and in Sicily, the mafia acts as ground-level enforcer and intimidating left-wing voters, protecting landowners, ensuring the right results. Once again, the Brotherhood serves the power of the moment and gets paid for it. By the 1950s, ships crossing from Palermo to New York carry not only emigrants, but cargo worth its weight in diamonds, white powder hidden in olive oil tins. The American families expand distribution through Harlem, Brooklyn, and New Jersey, building a drug empire that will later fuel the addiction crisis of the 1960s. Behind it all stand the Sicilians, quiet, patient, calculating, the invisible shareholders of crime. The transatlantic partnership forged in war has become a business model in peace. For every arrest in New York, a new family rises in Palermo. For every speech about justice, another handshake is sealed in a vineyard at midnight. And so by the mid-1950s, the Sicilian Mafia is no longer a provincial curiosity. It is an international corporation of fear, born in lemon groves, tempered in blood, perfected in Manhattan. Its leaders now speak three languages: Italian, English, and money. The old men in Palermo look across the Atlantic and smile. The seed they planted among the lemons has grown into a forest of steel and skyscrapers. By the early 1920s, Sicily is a tired island. The Great War has ended, but the peace feels hollow. Farmers return from the trenches to find their fields sold, their children hungry, and their landlords richer than ever. The honored society that once promised justice now thrives on intimidation. Murders are written off as family feuds, disappearances as accidents. The state in Rome watches from afar, half blind and half afraid. Then comes a man who fears nothing, Benito Mussolini, Il Duce. To his followers, he is destiny in human form. To his enemies, a black-shirted storm about to sweep the peninsula. In 1922, he marches on Rome and takes power. Within months, the fascist salute replaces debate. The tricolor flag shares the wind with banners of the Roman wolf. Mussolini promises order, discipline, and the resurrection of a new Roman Empire. For that, Sicily must obey. But Sicily obeys no one easily. When Mussolini visits Palermo in May 1924, the crowds cheer from obligation, not devotion. Waiting to greet him on the edge of town is Don Francesco Cuccia, the local mayor of Villalba. And, quietly, a capomandamento. Seeing the dictator's convoy of soldiers and carabinieri, Cuccia leans in with a smile. "Your Excellency, you have no need of all these guards here. You are under my protection." It is meant as courtesy. Mussolini hears it as insolence. In that instant, he decides that the mafia, the invisible parliament of Sicily, it must be annihilated. He will replace the code of silence with the roar of the state. Within weeks, decrees fly from Rome like arrows. Police are doubled, judges replaced, informants rewarded. And to lead the purge, Mussolini chooses a man whose legend still chills Sicilian memory: Cesare Mori, a career prefect known for storming bandit hideouts with pistol drawn. The dictator gives him a telegram that reads, "Your Excellency has carte blanche. The authority of the state must be re-established in Sicily, absolutely. Should the laws prove insufficient, we shall make new laws." Mori arrives in Palermo in 1925 under a gray sky. He steps from the train wearing a civilian coat, but the way soldiers salute him makes everyone understand. This man carries Rome's full wrath. Within days, he begins arresting petty thieves, local bosses, even mayors suspected of complicity. Those who resist see their doors blown off with dynamite. Witnesses describe villages surrounded by police lines, searches that last for days, suspects dragged into the square for questioning under a banner reading, "Lo Stato non si arrende." The state does not surrender. At first, many Sicilians watch with mixed emotions. Some whisper, "At last someone is cleaning the island." Others mutter, "He's worse than the Dons." Both may be right. Mori believes mercy breeds rebellion. He fills prisons faster than Rome can process paperwork. The overflow is sent to mainland camps. His methods are brutal but effective. For a while. One siege becomes legend. Gangi, a mountain village said to shelter dozens of mafiosi. Mori seals every road, cuts the telegraph lines, and waits. When the fugitives refuse to surrender, he orders the impossible: seize the women and children. For days, smoke rises from hearths where no men remain. Then, one by one, gaunt figures descend from the hills to surrender. Newspapers call him Il Prefetto di Ferro, The Iron Prefect. Rome applauds. Palermo trembles. By 1928, more than 11,000 people have been arrested, hundreds convicted. Fascist posters proclaim the Mafia destroyed. For the first time in memory, protection payments stop, and a farmer can walk to market without paying tribute. Yet beneath this apparent calm, resentment simmers. Maury's dragnet has swept up innocents alongside killers. Families humiliated in public now nurture private revenge, and the Mafia, patient as ever, simply goes underground. When Mussolini recalls Maury in 1929, mission accomplished, the island exhales in cautious relief. The Iron Prefect retires to Florence, writes memoirs, and dies, convinced he saved Sicily. But those who know the island's rhythm understand better. He has merely pruned the weed. Its roots remain. A decade later, Europe burns again. Fascism, once a promise of strength, becomes a curse. As Allied bombers roar over Palermo in 1943, the people hide in cellars, whispering prayers to saints long forgotten. Some whisper to other protectors, men whose names the priests won't say from the pulpit. The Allies plan to land on Sicily that July, but their maps are old and their intelligence thin. How do you invade an island where every farmhouse might belong to an enemy, or to no one at all? American naval intelligence revives an improbable idea: contact the Sicilians themselves. Through a web of intermediaries, lawyers, dock workers, the remnants of New York's Italian underworld, a message reaches a prisoner in Dannemora, New York, Salvatore "Lucky" Luciano. Luciano still commands loyalty from his old partners, and many of them have cousins back home. He agrees to help on one condition: protection for his people. Soon coded letters cross the Atlantic. Names whispered in prison corridors appear in Allied briefings. When the invasion fleet approaches, the Americans carry not just weapons but introductions. In dozens of towns, white sheets hang from balconies as surrender flags. Men once branded outlaws guide Allied convoys through mountain passes. And when the shooting stops, those same men are rewarded, made mayors, policemen, friends of the administration. In the wreckage of fascism, the Mafia steps out of the ashes wearing a hero's badge. To the Allies, they are useful local leaders. To the villagers, they're back in business. Protection payments return under the polite name of contributions. Within 2 years, the same families Mussolini tried to erase are dining with American officers and new Italian politicians. Post-war reconstruction brings the Marshall Plan, billions in aid to rebuild Europe. In Sicily, much of that money evaporates before reaching the poor. Contracts for roads, ports, and housing flow through intermediaries who all trace back to familiar surnames. The Dons have evolved again, less rustic, more refined. They wear tailored suits and drive American cars left behind by the army. Their new product is no longer lemons or labor, it's influence. By the early 1950s, Sicily is quiet on the surface. But beneath the calm, a new alliance forms between returning war veterans, corrupt officials, and the old clans. They call it l'onorata società once more, the honored society, though honor now measures itself in dollars. The lessons of the past century are complete. Silence is power, fear is currency, and survival, not ideology, is the only creed that never dies. From the lemon groves of the 19th century to the ashes of World War II, the Mafia has endured every conqueror, Phoenician, Roman, Norman, fascist, and adapted to each. The Iron Prefect believed he had broken them with prisons and rifles, but he only taught them patience. Now, as the rubble of Europe cools, Sicily's shadow prepares to stretch across oceans once again. They say the island forgets nothing. Perhaps that is why the past still walks its streets at night, not as ghosts, but as men who learned how to live forever. The war ends, but Sicily does not rest. Rubble turns to opportunity. Broken ports reopen to trade, and with trade comes smuggling. Where soldiers once landed with rifles, freighters now arrive with crates of olive oil, Dutch soap, and wine. Inside some of them lies the new treasure of the age, heroin. The late 1940s feel almost miraculous. Money flows in from the Marshall Plan. Politicians promise rebirth, and farmers return to rebuild. Yet for the Koshi, rebuilding means reinventing. The citrus boom is gone. Protection rackets alone can't feed the families. The Dons need a new product, portable, priceless, and invisible. They find it in white powder. From Turkey's poppy fields to Marseille's refineries, morphine base travels westward. In hidden rooms near Palermo and Trapani, chemists refine it into heroin so pure it could fell a man with a breath. The product moves inside barrels of sardines and tins of olive oil, then sails quietly toward New York. There, the cousins, Luciano's old network, now reorganized under Genovese and Bonanno, take delivery, cut it, and sell it by the ounce. For every kilogram shipped, a Sicilian town eats for a year. For every addict in Harlem, a villa rises on the Palermo hills. The war made heroes, peace made businessmen. Politics soon bends to the flow. Post-war governments fear communism more than crime. The mafia quietly backs the Christian Democrats, delivering votes in exchange for contracts. New highways carve through the island, each one blessed by a priest and paid for twice, once by Rome, once by the Casca. But heroin changes everything. It is cleaner than extortion, faster than lemons, deadlier than bullets. A new generation of bosses, clever, ruthless, educated, steps from the shadows. Among them, names whispered with awe: Luciano Leggio, Salvatore Rina, Bernardo Provenzano, men from the mountain town of Corleone, where poverty has teeth and mercy is a rumor. They call themselves I Corleonesi. To them, the old dons are dinosaurs. Honor is just branding. Fear is efficiency. Within a decade, their ambition will drench Sicily in blood. By the 1950s, Palermo looks like a city reborn. Cranes stab the skyline. Concrete dust replaces lemon blossoms. Italians call it Il Sacco di Palermo, the sack of Palermo. Over 80% of all building permits fall into the hands of 5 men, all friends of the same families. Whole neighborhoods vanish overnight. Historic villas collapse to make room for cheap apartments. Every truckload of cement carries a tax payable in envelopes. The racket is perfect. Government funds pour in. Companies owned by front men win the bids, and the Koshi skim millions. If a journalist asks questions, his office burns. If a councilman resists, his car explodes. The new mafia wears suits by day and funeral black by night. Heroin money fuels the boom. Ships bring morphine base from the east. Sicilian labs refine it. French middlemen move it through Marseille to the Americas. The French connection becomes legend. American headlines scream, but Sicily sleeps, its economy quietly addicted to the same drug as its customers abroad. The Corleonesi watch patiently. While Palermo's aristocrats toast deals in seaside clubs, the mountain men stock weapons and memorize the network's weaknesses. They are wolves waiting for the shepherds to grow fat. By the early 1960s, the peace fractures. In 1962, A dispute over missing drug money ignites a gunfight at Chiaculi, a Palermo suburb. A car bomb meant for one boss kills 7 policemen and soldiers instead. Italy gasps. For the first time, the national press writes the words Cosa Nostra in bold. Rome responds with another wave of arrests. Hundreds flee to America or South America. For a moment, it seems the mafia might finally collapse. It doesn't. It molts. The fugitives carry experience, contacts, and vengeance across oceans. The Corleonesi stay home, unscathed and underestimated. When the storm passes, they will inherit the ruins. The 1970s arrive like a curse. Oil prices soar, unemployment spikes, and the heroin trade explodes. The Sicilian refineries now process tons each month, feeding New York, Montreal, and São Paulo. Dollars flow back through Swiss banks into Palermo's glittering cafes. But the old bosses grow careless. They dine on TV cameras, court politicians, forget the ancient rule, visibility kills. Rina and Provenzano remember. They strike silently. One by one, rivals vanish, shot in elevators, blown apart in cars, lured to meetings that end in ditches. By 1981, the Second Mafia War begins, and Sicily bleeds like never before. Bodies pile in ditches, priests vanish, judges hide behind armored glass. Even children of informers are not spared. The Corleonesi take everything. Palermo, the ports, the heroin, the fear. Their cruelty finally awakens the state they thought dead. 2 men refuse to bow. Giovanni Falcone and Paolo Borsellino, magistrates from Palermo who treat Cosa Nostra as an organization, not a myth. They map its finances, decode its hierarchies, and launch the Maxi trial of 1986, indicting 475 mafiosi at once. For a moment, truth wins. Convictions rain down, Rina goes underground, and Italy breathes. But victory costs dearly. In 1992, car bombs kill both Falcone and Borsellino within months. Their deaths shake the nation more than any war. Millions march. Children carry banners reading La Mafia è una montagna di merda. The Corleonesi overreach. Public fury forces the state to strike back with laws, informants, and the army in the streets. Riena is captured in 1993, Provenzano years later. For the first time, the mafia bends. Yet even in defeat, it survives, smaller, quieter, smarter. Heroin routes shift to new continents. Money laundering replaces gunfire. The Dons no longer sit in cafes, they sit in boardrooms, investing in wind farms and construction firms. Fear still whispers, only now it wears a tie. The story circles back to where it began, an island bathed in sunlight, haunted by shadows. Sicily has endured conquerors, dictators, and crusades, yet its oldest empire is the one built on silence. Cosa Nostra no longer rules openly, but its ghost lingers in every handshake that hides a favor, every secret that buys a future. Empires fall, dictators die, even kings fade to dust. But as long as men believe that loyalty can replace law and fear can buy peace, the mafia will never be a story of the past, only a mirror of our present. Palermo, 1993. The streets smell of smoke and jasmine. The king of terror, Salvatore Rina, is finally in handcuffs. Cameras flash, soldiers block the alleys, and for the first time in decades, the island dares to breathe. People whisper that the nightmare is over, but those who know Sicily know better. Cosa Nostra doesn't die. It changes shape. Inside crumbling safe houses, the survivors meet by candlelight. Bernardo Provenzano, the silent deputy who outlived them all, issues a single order. No more bombs, no more headlines. We disappear. Overnight, the mafia trades bullets for spreadsheets. Violence has brought too much heat. Money laundering brings none. They pour their heroin millions into construction companies, agribusiness, even wind energy farms subsidized by the European Union. Every contract, every permit, every tender is a new battlefield, only now fought with lawyers instead of pistols. By the late 1990s, Palermo gleams again. Cafes reopen, tourists return, and the politicians proclaim victory. Yet the same last names sign the new building permits. The bosses have gone quiet, but their accountants haven't. Elsewhere, the network mutates. In Naples, the Camorra thrives in street rackets. In Calabria, the 'Ndrangheta seizes the ports and the cocaine trade. In Rome, businessmen with clean shoes whisper the same oaths once sworn over blood. The Sicilian families, older and wiser, act as brokers, lending reputation, collecting percentages, teaching silence. Provenzano rules from hiding for more than a decade, sending orders by hand-typed notes called Pizzini. Each reads like a relic from another century. Polite, biblical, coded. He signs them B and ends with blessings for the family. Police call him the tractor for the slow, relentless way he moves through time, plowing the past into the future. In 2006, after 43 years underground, he was captured in a farmhouse near Corleone. The cupboard holds cheese, rosary beads, and stacks of typed Pizzini. The last of the old lions is gone. But the field he tilled is vast, and seeds travel easily. The 21st century arrives with fiber optic cables instead of freight ships. But the trade continues. The routes that once carried heroin now carry cocaine, synthetic drugs, weapons, and data. Sicilian brokers work with Colombian cartels, Balkan smugglers, Russian oligarchs, and Chinese triads. Money no longer crosses oceans in crates, it jumps borders in seconds. The Koche learn the new geography: tax havens, shell companies, crypto accounts. €1 invested in a fake import at Palermo's port can emerge in London as legal capital. Banks investigate, then quietly settle. Politicians denounce, then forget. Cosa Nostra has become a consultancy of corruption. Its soldiers are no longer men in trench coats, but accountants, lawyers, and local administrators. They run waste management firms, real estate consortia, logistics hubs. Garbage becomes gold. Control the contracts, control the city. A shipment of toxic waste from northern factories disappears into a Sicilian quarry, and the profit feeds another campaign fund. Everyone wins, except the earth. The younger generation calls itself La Borghesia Mafiosa, the mafia bourgeoisie. They quote business journals, send their children to universities in Milan and London, and attend charity dinners beside the same politicians who denounce organized crime on TV. No saints' pictures, no blood oaths, just invoices, partnerships, and untraceable donations. Yet when a journalist digs too deep, the old methods return. A car fire, a bullet, an accident. Modernity has not dulled the blade. It only hides it better. In 2010, a new kind of alliance forms. The Calabrian 'Ndrangheta dominates cocaine. Cosa Nostra provides laundering and logistics. Ships from South America dock in Gioia Tauro. Trucks roll north, and money flows south again, into Sicilian accounts. Investigators call it the Invisible Confederation. To the Dons, it's simply good business. Today, tourists walk the same Palermo alleys once ruled by fear. Street art paints Falcone and Borsellino as saints. Cafes sell espresso named Libertà. But behind the memorials, the structures remain. The mafia has moved from terror to integration, less a parallel state than a parasite living inside the real one. Whenever bureaucracy grows complex, a middleman appears, someone who knows a guy. That small favor, that silent shortcut, that envelope of gratitude, those are the arteries through which the old blood still flows. You can ban the word mafia, but you cannot outlaw the habit of dependency. Cosa Nostra's modern face is paradoxical. It finances hospitals and steals medical supplies, funds churches and launders drug money through their charities. In the digital era, it invests in online gambling and logistics for e-commerce, hiding in plain sight within the same networks that deliver your nightly purchases. A criminal ecosystem so sophisticated, it rarely needs violence, only opportunity. Every few years, the headlines proclaim another great arrest, another boss in handcuffs. Yet for every reina captured, a boardroom somewhere applauds. Because the mafia's greatest invention was never the gun or the code of silence. It was the idea that corruption can be normal, even convenient. And that idea, born on a sun-drenched island centuries ago, has outlived every empire that tried to crush it. It flows through ports and parliaments, through digital ledgers and whispered favors. It is no longer strictly Sicilian. It is global, invisible, and sometimes even legal. They said the mafia would vanish when Sicily modernized. But modernization was exactly what it needed. Today its weapons are contracts, its soldiers wear suits, and its wars are fought in the markets we all depend on. The island no longer exports lemons or heroin. It exports a lesson. Power is never destroyed, only reorganized. Palermo 2007. A single gavel strike echoes through the bunker-style courthouse built decades earlier for the Maxi trial. The room smells of stone, sweat, and history. Before the bench stand men whose grandfathers once ruled villages by fear alone. Their lawyers quote case law instead of omertà. Their ledgers, seized from computers, speak more eloquently than any confession. Italy has entered the age of surveillance. Wiretaps, banking trails, digital forensics, the new holy trinity of justice. Where once a whisper in a cafe could vanish in smoke, now an intercepted text can unravel an empire. The Koche discover that invisibility in the internet age is harder than invisibility in the hills. During the 2000s, a slow, relentless hunt begins. One by one, fugitives thought untouchable fall. Bernardo Provenzano, the silent tractor captured in 2006. Matteo Messina Denaro, heir of the Western clans, forced deeper underground. Each arrest is televised. Each headline proclaims La fine di Cosa Nostra. But veterans of the war on organized crime know that endings in Sicily are never final. The Hydra loses heads only to grow new ones, smaller, smarter, hidden in plain sight. Still, something real is changing. The mafia's monopoly on fear is broken. For the first time, young Sicilians begin to talk. To journalists, to police, even to each other. Restaurants hang plaques reading "Pizzo free." University students organize marches, through Corleone carrying pictures of Falcone and Borsellino. A generation raised amid funerals discovers the courage to say no. The state, though still imperfect, learns to listen. Witness protection programs expand. Anti-mafia prosecutors collaborate with Europol and Interpol. The fight that once seemed confined to an island now spans a continent. For the old bosses, the silence becomes unbearable. The network that once answered nods and gestures now depends on emails and encrypted phones. Some adapt, most do not. As they fade, a new kind of criminal rises. Less Godfather, more entrepreneur. By the 2010s, power lives in servers, money is digital, borders are illusions, and wherever information moves faster than law, the mafia reappears. Sicilian syndicates diversify into logistics, waste recycling, renewable energy subsidies, online gambling. They buy land through shell companies registered in Luxembourg, trade carbon credits in Zurich, and launder profits through cryptocurrencies that regulators barely understand. A single click replaces the handshake, but the code remains the same: loyalty, secrecy, profit. Investigators tracing ransomware payments in 2020 stumble across familiar patterns: companies with ghost directors, funds routed through Palermo banks. It seems almost poetic. The masters of secrecy embracing the ultimate secret: data itself. The global pandemic only deepens their reach. As governments rush to distribute relief funds, intermediaries appear offering help with paperwork. Behind the bureaucracy hides the same logic as ever: a favor for a favor, a percentage for protection. While hospitals overflow, contracts for masks, cleaning, and waste disposal enrich companies owned by cousins of forgotten dons. The genius of Cosa Nostra has never been innovation in crime. It has been innovation in adaptation. From lemons to heroin to hedge funds, the product changes, but the method endures. Create dependency, monopolize trust, profit from chaos. And chaos in the 21st century is plentiful. Across Europe, anti-mafia task forces begin to share intelligence in real time. Digital signatures replace paper warrants. Drones track shipments through the ports of Gioia Tauro and Palermo. Each victory feels monumental. And yet, somewhere, another lawyer opens another company. Perfectly legal. Perfectly dirty. Sicily today is not the island of bombs and bodyguards it once was. Tourists stroll through Via Roma without fear. Children learn the names of Falcone and Borsellino before they learn multiplication. But every generation must choose whether to remember or to forget. The mafia's visible reign may be over, yet its habits survive in miniature, in every bribe accepted, every rule bent for convenience. It is less an organization than a culture. The belief that shortcuts are smarter than honesty, that silence is safer than truth, that is the ghost Sicily still wrestles with. And yet there is light. Grassroots cooperatives cultivate vineyards on confiscated mafia lands, bottling wines under labels that proudly read Libera Terra. Former safe houses become schools. Old bosses' villas host youth orchestras. The island that once exported fear now exports resilience. In 2023, Matteo Messina Denaro, the last great fugitive of the old guard, is captured after 30 years in hiding. He dies in custody months later, leaving behind no empire, only memories. Television stations replay his arrest beside the images of Rina and Provenzano. 3 faces, 3 eras, one story finally closing its circle. Once, they ruled with bullets, then with money. Now their legacy survives only as a warning. The camera drifts over the Sicilian coast. Lemon trees in bloom, fishermen mending nets, sunlight glittering on calm water. No gunfire, no sirens, just the quiet resilience of a land that has outlasted every conqueror, even the ones born from its own soil. Perhaps the true victory is not that the mafia has vanished, but that Sicily finally dares to dream without it. Every island tells 2 stories: the one it sells to strangers, and the one it whispers to itself. Sicily sells sunlight, cuisine, and romance. What it whispers is far older, a memory written in silence and shadow. Long before the word mafia crossed oceans, it was already becoming myth. Even when newspapers screamed headlines, most Sicilians still spoke in parables. There was once a man who kept order when no one else could. There was once a family who punished the unjust. That was the legend, the idea that beneath corruption and invasion, honor had found a home. It made good stories, and good stories are hard to kill. By the late 20th century, cinema had carried that myth across the world. From The Godfather to Goodfellas, from Scarface to every black suit Halloween costume, the Sicilian gangster became a global archetype. The outlaw with manners, the criminal philosopher, the dark mirror of power. Yet for every scene bathed in Hollywood lighting, 1,000 real funerals took place under Sicilian skies. The world quoted Don Corleone's lines. Sicilians buried their sons. Somewhere between fact and fiction, Cosa Nostra discovered immortality, not as an organization but as an idea. Why does the myth endure? Because it speaks to something deeper than crime. It promises control in a chaotic world, loyalty in a faithless age, justice when institutions fail. Every society builds such myths. Sicily simply gave its one a name. And once the myth left the island, it became universal. The Mafia stopped being a place. It became a language of power. By the dawn of the new millennium, even people who despise the Mafia still quote its code. Never betray the family. They use it as metaphor for loyalty, business, politics. The same vocabulary that once silenced witnesses now sells perfume and luxury watches. Somewhere in that transformation lies the most dangerous victory the Mafia ever achieved: to make the world forget what it really was. Reel after reel, the myth fractures. Archival footage of Judges Falcone and Borsellino, of crying mothers outside shattered cars, of police escorting children to safe houses. Reality intrudes like daylight through a cracked shutter. The world begins to ask, if honor was ever the code, why did honor kill the innocent? Historians peel away the legend layer by layer. They find not noble knights, but pragmatic opportunists. Not secret philosophers, but accountants of fear. Cosa Nostra's greatness was administrative, not romantic. It survived centuries because it understood logistics, supply, demand, loyalty, and silence. Its cruelty was never passion, and it was procedure. But myths don't vanish when truth arrives, they adapt. Each decade reinvents the Mafia it prefers to see. In the 1950s, it was the rustic brotherhood. In the 1970s, the drug empire. In the 1990s, the terrorist machine. In our century, the business network. What remains constant is fascination. We fear power, yet we are drawn to its order. The Mafia, stripped of folklore, reveals an uncomfortable truth. It is a mirror held to the face of civilization itself. Wherever corruption hides behind respectability, a fragment of Cosa Nostra breathes. And so writers, filmmakers, and musicians keep returning to Sicily's shadow. They find they're not just villains, but questions. How far would you go to protect your own? What would you trade for safety, for loyalty, for silence? Those questions outlive every trial and execution. They are the same questions that built kingdoms, corporations, and empires. Maybe that's why the Mafia myth refuses extinction, because it is made of us. Now the sea is calm again. The old bosses are dust. The villas are museums. The names are history. But the story doesn't end with them. It ends with us. Walk through Palermo today and you will see two Sicilies. One sells postcards of The Godfather to tourists. The other plants vines on confiscated Mafia land, bottles wine labeled Freedom Grapes, and donates its profit to schools. Children who once whispered now sing folk songs in courtyards, once patrolled by gunmen. Every year on the anniversary of the massacres, bells ring, not for fear but for remembrance. Sicily is teaching itself to dream without permission. Still, the Moral of this story reaches farther than the island. The mafia was born from neglect, from centuries of people forced to protect themselves because their rulers would not. Wherever injustice leaves a vacuum, something like Cosa Nostra will grow to fill it. Call it cartel, syndicate, corporation, or regime, the structure is the same. Silence breeds tyranny. Complicity feeds it. And so the true antidote to the mafia is not more police or prisons. It is participation. When citizens speak, when they demand fairness instead of favors, the shadow retreats. This tale of an island and its ghosts is really a tale of the human heart. We all crave belonging. We all fear betrayal. And when law and compassion fail, we build our own codes. The mafia was one such code, born of need, fed by greed, destroyed by the courage to say no. The waves return. The camera drifts over lemon groves reborn, over the memorial walls etched with the names of judges, policemen, journalists, and ordinary citizens who refused silence. Their sacrifice rewrote the ending of the oldest story Sicily ever told. Once there was an island that believed silence was safety. Then it learned that silence was death. And so it spoke and lived. To every voice that broke the silence. Every empire leaves a ruin, every ruin a lesson. Sicily's ruins are not just marble and stone. They're moral. From the olive groves to the back rooms of Parliament, the mafia's story was never simply about crime. It was about what happens when fear becomes a habit and silence becomes a system. The old dons are gone, their portraits fading on cracked newspaper pages. But the logic that made them powerful, that quiet calculation of favors and fear, still whispers in boardrooms, bureaucracies, and private deals around the world. You can see it whenever a handshake replaces a law, whenever convenience wins over conscience. And yet, for every shadow, there is a counterlight. The same island that once invented the code of silence also invented its opposite, the courage to speak. Farmers who once paid tribute now run cooperatives on seized mafia land. Children learn the names of Falcone and Borsellino, the way other children learn fairy tales. Heroes who fought monsters, not with swords, but with evidence. We often imagine evil as dramatic. Explosions, gunfire, blood on asphalt. But most evil, the kind that lasts, is ordinary. It hides in hesitation, in the thought, better not get involved. That's the silence the mafia fed on. Breaking it, anywhere, is an act of rebellion. History shows the same pattern everywhere power decays. People trade freedom for protection, truth for loyalty, justice for belonging. That trade is seductive. It feels safe at first. But one day you wake up and the favor you asked for owns you. That is the ancient warning of Sicily. If this long journey through centuries of shadow teaches anything, it's that cultures heal the moment they stop romanticizing their wounds. For decades, the world adored the mafia myth, the suits, the codes, the family. Now it learns to admire something rarer, accountability. Ordinary citizens standing in daylight saying basta, enough. Their defiance is the true inheritance of Sicily. So when you watch these closing scenes, lemons in bloom, the sea calm again, the laughter of children echoing where once there was gunfire, remember every society carries its own Cosa Nostra, its own secret network of silence. The question is not whether it exists. The question is whether we keep pretending not to hear it. Perhaps the real revolution is not to destroy the mafia, but to destroy the need for one. Now we want to hear from you. After everything you've seen and heard, what do you believe? Has the mafia truly been defeated, or has it simply learned to wear a cleaner face? Could a modern society ever become completely free from the quiet corruption that started on this island? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your answer is part of this story. Because silence built the mafia, and conversation is what ends it.